A very good day to all who have joined us here. Myself, Dr. Vinod Kalkoti from Medical Affairs team. On behalf of Zenith Division of Intas Pharmaceutical, I welcome you all for this edition of Endocrine Talk Show 2024. The main agendas of today's talk is to review the modern epidemic of obesity and its related morbidity and mortality. And as always, to chair this session, we have with us Dr. Shubhankar Chaudhary, sir. He's the Director of Department of Diabetes and Endocrinology at Medica Super Speciality Hospital in Kolkata. He's the former head of Department of Endocrinology at Institute of Postgraduate Medicine and SSKM Hospital in Kolkata. He's the immediate past editor-in-chief of Indian Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism, past president of Endocrine Society of India, and immediate past president of Endocrine Society of Bengal. Dr. Chaudhary is also the member of Subject Expert Committee for CDSCO Government of India. He's also the founder patron of South Asian Federation of Endocrine Society. And in fact, he has more than 220 publications in various reputed national and international journals to his credit. It's indeed my pleasure to welcome such a stalwart in the field of endocrinology to this session. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Now,
very good evening.
Good evening, sir. Without any further ado, I'd like to hand over the session to Dr. Shubhankar, sir. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope at least in Kolkata, things have cooled down a little bit with a few showers, nor'westers. What about the rest of the country? Dr. Marwa looks fresh as ever.
Thank you.
So, and of course, Dr. Beena, Dr. Deep, and Akshata. Right. So, welcome to this episode, another episode of Endocrine Talk Show, and we are going to discuss a very important issue, that of obesity, which is a pandemic actually in our part of the world, across the globe, and even in our part of the world. We are, of course, in a difficult situation in that we are having to tackle the problem of obesity, undernutrition, infectious diseases, as also the burden of obesity. In fact, any literature would suggest that there are large numbers of people with obesity in our country, as we see every day in our clinics, and we need to cater to them, we need to manage them. At the same time, we may or may not have all the facilities that are available elsewhere in the world, but we still have to provide the best care to our patients. So with this preamble, I would welcome all our attendees from different parts of the country. Please put in your questions and I shall see them in my chat box so that we can directly address the questions to our panelists. And as always, we are very fortunate to have a very rich panel this evening. We have Dr. Tivan Marwa, who is Honorary Associate Professor and heads Department of Endocrinology at SVP Hospital, Ahmedabad. He has a significant experience and training in France, and he's been held various important posts, including past president of Association of Physicians of Ahmedabad. We also have this evening with us, can we go on to, Dr. Beena Bansal, who is a very dynamic endocrinologist, who was a former director of endocrinology at Medanta, the Medicity in Gurgaon, and currently she is founder and owner of Door to Care, an endocrine and diabetes clinic. Excellent efforts there, Beena. And she's, of course, several publications, and she's been a regular invited faculty in various national conferences. We have also with us none other than Dr. Deep Datta, who is a marvelous young endocrine. I mean, they are no longer young, they are very well mature in their own right. He was a former assistant professor of endocrinology at the RML Hospital in Delhi. Currently, he is a consultant endocrinologist at the Cedar Super Speciality Healthcare in Delhi. He's a prolific publisher, published what I saw, more than 200, 223 publications in indexed international journals. Wonderful work at this young age. He's been
Thank you, sir.
associate editor of Diabetes and Metabolic Syndrome, and also our own International Journal of Diabetes in Developing Countries. And we are very happy to have with us Dr. Akshata Desai, who is a consultant endocrinologist at Apex Hospital at Jalandhar. She is American board certified both in internal medicine as well as in endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism. So warm welcome to all of you. So we look forward to an evening of maybe learning amongst ourselves and hopefully helping our physicians cater better to their patients with obesity. So we do understand obesity as a major problem across the globe. Can I first go to Dr. Triven Marwa? In our country, I think closely linked to obesity is a problem of sarcopenia. And so, which is more important, do you think, that plays a role in the morbidity that it's related to obesity? Is it the fat per se, or is it the lack of muscle, which is also important?
First of all, I'm very thankful to INTAR for organizing this excellent talk show, and led by none other but Subhankar Chaudhary. I know him since about 2.5 decades. He's been the torchbearer of endocrinology of our country, leading and heading many important tasks, and he had delivered them very well. First of all, my apologies. I got very bad conjunctivitis last night itself. So, fortunately, the advantage of being online, I am not going to spread this to you, all of you. But at the same time, it was very tough to prepare this topic, which is very useful, and it is, obesity is going to lead next, I would say, 25 years of our active practice. Now, answering Dr. Subhankar, your question, I think it's a very valid and important thing. We are focusing a lot on bones and fat, but we are forgetting muscles. And probably muscles are very vital and important parts of body, not only for our appearance, but they are extremely important for the metabolism of different fuels, and they are responsible for many disorders which we are facing. Probably sarcopenia is very easily missed out, and I believe that our focus is mainly on adiposity, but loss of muscle is very vital and important. And unfortunately, there are not many things which we can do. I recently asked one of the topmost endocrinologists of US in one of the recent conferences, sir, how to, build muscle mass again. So his answer was prevention. So unfortunately, once the muscle is lost, we can't do anything. So it is very important that we should focus on this very active and important organ. We should not just see that this part of the body and giving you a good figure, but it's a very active, important part, very intelligent part of the body as far as the metabolism is concerned. So whether muscle loss is more important or fat increase is more important, it is extremely debatable, and there might be some crosstalks. And muscles, as it has been shown that this is very important part of diabetes metabolism. And unfortunately, there is very steady state as far as the muscles are concerned for glucose homeostasis or glucose metabolism. Liver, you can correct very easily hepatic glucose production by different ways and modalities, like reducing weight, and then eventually you can restart hepatic glucose production to be lesser, and you can get the benefit. But unfortunately, this is not obtained with the muscles. Number one, because sarcopenia, once it has happened, it is very difficult to recover or regain. And number two, muscles, the resistance to muscle its sustained remains even after weight loss, because weight loss is mainly in fat and you are not able to correct muscle. So I hope,
Right.
Shubhankar, I could answer
Yeah.
your question that
Yeah, of
sarcopenia is
course.
very
Yeah.
important thing.
Just a point that I wanted to make is, do you not believe that muscle cannot also be developed? I mean, is it just a one-way process of loss? Can we not also develop
Uh,
our muscles?
there are stages. At certain stage, you can recover mass. I think there is a classification, a good classification. Unfortunately, this question was not there,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I am taken a bit surprised.
Yeah.
But it's a good point that you raised. And
Yeah.
first
Sure.
question was whether obese people are happy people
Sure.
or
Sure.
not.
Sure.
So
Right.
anyway,
Okay.
but there is a classification A, B, C, D, and where if person reaches to the stage D, one cannot recover muscle which is lost.
Okay.
So
So there are
initially,
different
so this is
stages.
what I'm
Right.
telling, and most of our
Sure.
patients, they have gone to that stage where there is sarcopenia, and particularly the factor
Sure.
is chest and the upper parts of the body. The muscle loss or wasting is, permanent, and it is very difficult to regain. So
Right.
I would also very much interested if you are having some information or knowledge to share with our panelists as well as our viewer, where we can first prevent muscle, but once it is lost, what can be done?
Right. Yeah. So at least Dr. Marwa has very clearly, in no uncertain terms, has emphasized that fat excess is bad, but muscle loss is also bad, which is worse. We do not know, for example, maybe at this point of time, but we need to take care of the muscles as well. Now, before we we've got a question in the chat box. I can't see who has put this question. So in future, please try and identify yourself. So do all obese patients have some form of steatotic liver disease? Is it possible to have steatotic liver disease in extremely lean individuals, say with BMI less than 20? So let's go to Dr. Bina Bansal. So maybe you can add this part to what are the overall health hazards of obesity? Why is it just a cosmetic problem, or is it something beyond that?
Right. So actually continuing from your previous question and the second question which you asked about steatotic hepatic dysfunction. So how we define obesity becomes very important, because now we are saying that it's not just overall weight or BMI we are talking about. We are saying that if at a certain BMI the muscle mass is better, maybe the prognosis is not as bad and the health hazards may be different, whereas someone who has obesity but sarcopenia at a lower BMI also, they may be having more health hazards. So it's very important how we are looking at obesity. What obesity means is probably not just the BMI, but there are other factors which are more important. So going from there, why I'm saying this is because the literature is quite confusing even when we say obesity health hazards. So definitely beyond a certain BMI, there are implications which we have been discussing so many times, that if the weight goes beyond a certain level, if the BMI is more than 30, for example, there is increased risk of all the metabolic disorders like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, even mechanical muscle joint functions, liver dysfunction, cholelithiasis, respiratory disorders like sleep apnea, hyperventilation syndrome. So all these disorders increase beyond a certain BMI, but we also understand there is a J-shaped curve, that even at lower BMIs, there is a problem. And the healthiest BMI thing is shifting. So now more and more literature is saying that the BMI at which the mortality is lowest is probably not 25, but a little higher than that. So overweight category may not actually be associated with increased mortality, whereas obesity is there, associated with increased mortality. So number one, obesity is associated with cardiac disorders, respiratory disorders, lot of joint osteoarthritis and other mechanical dysfunction. However, once...
And of course, diabetes as well.
Diabetes, insulin resistance, and MASLD. However, the mortality in patients who are overweight and obese and who already have cardiovascular disease is lower as compared to lean. So that there is a paradox there. So it's important to focus on that, because probably that paradox comes, number one, from the fact that the fitness level, cardiorespiratory fitness and the muscle mass may be different. So keeping at that, so these are all the health disorders, but that doesn't mean that everyone who is this is not exclusive to overweight or obesity. We always keep defining as lean MASLD or lean PCOS. Diabetes, we see so many people who are lean. The mechanisms may be similar, the insulin resistance, or it may be different also, especially in conditions like lean MASLD. There are other pathophysiological mechanisms which are described, but probably it also has to do with the distribution of fat. So overweight and obesity, not everyone will have MASLD, but a huge percentage. I think the figure will be something like 70-80%, especially if the person also has diabetes. Otherwise, 50% of all overweight obese people would have some bit of fatty liver. But lean people can also have, in the percentage of all the MASLD, around 10% or 15% may be lean in that overall group.
Right. So I hope you got the answer. It's not that every obese person has it, but a large percentage has it. But even non-obese individuals can and do have steatotic liver disease. Can I come to, so we talked about importance of less muscle versus more fat, but let's assume that we're talking of more fat. And can we ask Dr. Deep Datta, so what is more important? Is the total amount of fat, or is it the distribution that Dr. Veena was also just referring to?
Yes, sir. So great discussion we are having here. As the extension, yes, not only the total amount of fat is important, perhaps the distribution is even more important, because now we know some fat are metabolically totally inactive. So specifically, if we talk of visceral adiposity, which specifically means the fat between the intestines, the omental fat, and even more importantly, now we recognize the hepatic fat content and pancreatic fat content. These three are the most dangerous fat to have, and when they are more, they generate a lot of inflammatory cytokines which are released into the circulation. So they not only have a systemic inflammatory effect, they have local inflammatory effect at the level of portal circulation also. So not only the response of liver to insulin goes down, what we call insulin resistance, even the production of insulin to some extent comes down, what we call as beta cell dysfunction. We also understand that the cortisol metabolism is also dysregulated in the setting of increased visceral adiposity. In contrast, the peripheral fat, which is in the limbs, is much more, I would say, a silent fat. They have a less nuisance value as compared to this visceral fat. So increased visceral fat with sarcopenia, what we see a thrifty phenotype in South Asians, is what is making this diabetic pandemic so difficult for us to manage.
Can I ask a quick question aside? Do you think there is something as healthy obesity?
So yeah, there was a concept which was healthy obesity, which was very prevalent maybe 10 or 20 years back. Now we have realized there's nothing called healthy. It's a spectrum. In nature, everything is a spectrum. So one is the genes which we inherit from our parents, and one is the environmental factors, the lifestyles which modify the expression of the genes by the methylation. So if a person has got a very good set of genes, no family history of diabetes in 3 generations, he or she can afford to be obese. They will have a higher critical threshold of hepatic and pancreatic and visceral fat before they manifest insulin resistance and diabetes. In contrast, so we can call them so-called, apparently so-called in quotes, healthy obesity. And compared to another person who has got a strong family history of diabetes, he'll have a much lower threshold of hepatic, pancreatic, and visceral fat before a diabetes manifests.
Right. Yeah. So it's essentially, I think the current understanding is, even if one appears to be metabolically healthy at this point of time, if you follow them up, most of them will eventually become unhealthy. And as you correctly pointed out, possibly they have a better set of genes so that this manifests later. So now we come to Dr. Akshata. So we've already had some discussion as to quantification of obesity. So, how do we quantify obesity? Is BMI all that we need, or what else should we do?
So, thank you at the outset for having me here. It's wonderful to be with an expert panel like this. So we all know what BMI is, body mass index, and what it is actually is nothing but weight by height square. So it's important to understand that we cannot quantify obesity just by looking at a weight. So you have to have the weight, and if the weight is more than what is normal for that particular height, that's when the person is considered overweight or obese. So that's what a BMI is. BMI in the Asian standards is anything more than 23 is overweight, anything more than 25 is grade 1, and grade 2 is more than 30. But BMI alone is not sufficient, because what we're essentially missing out here sometimes is central obesity as well. So it's as important as it is to calculate the weight and the height and the BMI. It's also equally important to look at other parameters like the waist circumference and the hip circumference as well, to be able to, because in the thin obese Indian individual, wherein they look okay, but they're centrally obese, you could miss somebody with central obesity if you're just looking at a BMI. So that is one of the shortcomings of a BMI. So waist circumference becomes very important. So waist circumference, anything more than 90 is considered high. For women, and anything more than 80 is considered high for men. And the waist hip ratio is also something that we can calculate, again, more than 0.9 and 0.8 in women and men. And the other parameters we can look at as well, which give us a much better idea, is we could look at the body fat percentage as well. So traditionally, we use DEXA, which is the gold standard for this. Although in the clinical setting, we can also use BIA, a bioimpedance analysis. So if you have a good FDA-approved machine, which is giving you, standard accurate results, which are comparable to DEXA. So body fat percentage of more than 25% is considered high in males, and more than 30% is considered high in females. So these are other parameters that we can use in addition to a BMI to be able to quantify obesity in individuals.
Right. So for most physicians across the country, I think one would need to have a good weighing scale and a good stadiometer, whatever measure. Yeah. And
a measuring
possibly
tape.
also measuring tape, which will give you most of the information. And on top of that, if you can have a bioelectrical impedance, some sort, then that would be even better. So can we come back to Dr. Triven Marwa? So Dr. Akshata did say that BIA could also be a very useful way to assess obesity. So is it reliable? Do you think it's reliable?
Well, it is definitely useful tool, but then there are lots of variations. It has to be standardized for the population which we are looking at. And there are many factors which can affect measurement of BIA. It's temperature, diurnal variation, hydration, and many other things. So, and we need to also see the height of an individual, particularly limb length. So these things can definitely have impact on BIA. And the gold standard, as Akshata was telling, is DEXA or even MRI, but you cannot just see someone's body fat composition with such a difficult, test, and it won't be cost effective. But before embarking upon BIA, we can, first thing, we need to ask how many physicians they are having, stadiometers. So how many of them are measuring the BMI and waist hip ratio or even waistline. So focusing on this can be also enormously useful. But at the same time, I would also like to cite the example of, that famous YY paradox, Yagnik and Yedukin, that both have BMI 22, but Dr. Yagnik from our country and Dr. Yedukin from UK, the the amount of fat was about, if I recall well, is 21% in case of Dr. Endocrine and 36 or 37% Dr. Yagni. So there is variation, but this is variation. And in such situation, because Indians who are called lean, thin, fatty Indians, using BIA would be, more useful and give more information than BMI and other, common clinical parameters.
Right. So when an obese individual, and assuming that we have done the minimum basic measurements and arrived at a conclusion that this individual is obese, what would be the essential or the basic investigations that we would like to do? Most individuals would want us physicians to find out a cause for their obesity. And the expectation is if you find a cause, then there will be an answer. And so you dish out that answer. But realistically, what do you do? But the other part, of course, is to assess what is the health risk of that obesity. That's the other part. So, Veena, so how do we relatively quickly or assess an obese individual in our clinic?
Okay. So one is the investigation part, the assessment. I'll just divide that into two parts. So while evaluating obesity, of course, like any other evaluation, we start with the history taking. A detailed history taking gives us a lot of insight on how to go ahead with that person. For example, so as you had first asked whether it's a cosmetic problem or a health issue, most people who come to the clinic, they come with a cosmetic reason. So we usually in our clinic, it's a standard question to ask, why do you want to lose weight? And that clarifies a lot of expectations they have in mind from the doctors.
Veena, can I just interrupt and for all the other participants also?
Quickly.
Another major problem that we do get is person comes into the clinic not because of obesity, maybe because of diabetes, hypertension, whatever, but that you and I in the clinic find that this individual has a BMI of 35 and we are not happy, but the person is quite happy. I mean, so there it becomes even more difficult. So what do we tell them? They haven't come for obesity. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
Please go ahead with yours.
I understand. That's another set of people. So the investigations we have to do, there are some which we should probably do for everyone is lipid profile, investigating for diabetes, no insulin values, definitely only blood glucose and HbA1c, and liver function. And if required, using FIB4 analysis, we can go further and do fibroscan, which we are doing more and more. Assessment historically for sleep apnea, joint pains. While assessing all this, we can assess their daily mobility, what is their dietary pattern, the areas where we can intervene, the factors which are responsible for the weight, as you have asked, which are more likely to be found in their historical thing, in their psychosocial environment, like what is happening in their work environment, which is leading to the weight gain. Because when we take the weight journey, usually there are events when for example, COVID is a classical event when most people would have gained weight. So those are more important. Sometimes clinically, if there are pointers towards conditions like Cushing's syndrome, hypothyroidism, we routinely evaluate, although that is not usually a very it's not like a high TSH is going to cause a lot of weight gain, some bit of weight gain, of course. So it's not exactly a diagnosis, like etiological factor in most cases. Some patients we would evaluate for conditions like Cushing's or even acro. So mostly we will try to assess, looking at the patient, examining what other further testing would be required. So it would be personalized after this initial set of tests, which we would do for most people.
Right. And many of my patients at least come to me, obese individuals have been advised that you should do a thyroid test. And so have done a thyroid test and come with a TSH of 5.6 or 6.2. And they, with the expectation that the doctor will now fix the problem. So what do we do? Treat that 6.2, 5.6, or what do we do?
So we do not treat a low TSH with the, definitely.
I mean, it's not low. It's
I
high.
mean, yeah. So
For the
subclinical
patient, it's
hypothyroidism.
high, very
Yeah.
high.
I know. So these are the most difficult cases, and they take a lot of time because you have to explain that unless TSH goes beyond 10, we sometimes may not even need to intervene unless pregnancy is planned. So that is one whole scenario. So thyroid needs to be explained separately from the weight part, clearly dissociating the two of them. That's, I think, required.
Right. Okay. So we come back to Dr. Deep Datta. So theoretically, anyone is supposed to lose weight if we get the energy balance on the negative side. And in order to get it on the negative side, one way, of course, is to reduce the calorie intake. And then the other part is, of course, to increase the calorie expenditure. So when we advise for calorie restriction, Deep, what is your advice? Do you advise a fixed calorie, 1,000 calorie or 800 or whatever diet, or do you go for a deficit, let's say 500 calorie per day deficit diet? Which one works better, do you think? And in the meanwhile, I have been informed by INTAS people that I think about 850 doctors have already joined in to listen to the pearls of wisdom that you are all strewing around. So, Deep, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So I think so. It depends. What is the current weight of the patient? What is the height of the patient? And what is the ideal weight of the patient? How far is patient from his ideal weight? And ultimately, what weight loss we are targeting? We have to be practical about it. And then we decide what sort of diet plan we need to give. It has to be highly individualized. The same diet plan would work differently in different people. And whatever we may preach, it is difficult to implement. If the patient is not able to follow, it will not result in any results. We have to realize that when we talk of energy, so in a nutshell, we talk of a calorie deficit diet, definitely. Patients prefer when we give them a particular target, say a 1200 kilocalorie diet or a 1400 kilocalorie diet. Below 1200 kilocalorie diet, it is very difficult to implement for long periods of time, especially if you're talking of any diet less than 1000 kilocalories per day. You cannot give it with a proper meal. You will end up giving meal replacement, which is very costly. And again, it's not something which we can follow for long periods of time. So we need to tell a patient that losing weight is difficult. To maintain the weight, lost weight is even more difficult. So whatever you lose weight, please try to at least preserve it and not regain it back as something for the long term. So we have to give them a diet which they can sustain for a long period of time. So it's no wonders keto diet fat came, went away. Paleo diet fat came, went away, because they all resulted in good amount of weight loss over 3 to 6 months. But at 1 year, we are all back to square one. So I would say a mild calorie deficit diet with a specific figure, say 1200 or 1400, is something which I typically discuss with my patients, depending on what they can follow. Knowing in mind that each patient will have their own resting energy expenditure, that would be totally different. The BMR would be different from person to person. There's something called non-energy, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, like the energy we spend by just tapping our legs away, moving our arms, so just walking between the patient in the OPD. So that needs to be encouraged. So it's not only about going to the gym or park. Even the non-exercise activity thermogenesis can be improved greatly. And of course, with a good calorie deficit diet, around fixed number is something which I advise to my patients.
Right. And but before that, so what would be the target weight that we should talk about? Is it the ideal that the patient, from his or her height, maybe we have an easy formula to say that this is your target body weight? So is that what we shall tell them, or is it a target that we set for the next 3 months or whatever, till the next visit, how much he or she should lose? How do you approach it?
I don't know if whether it's right or not. I tell them, so this is your current weight. So I should follow the rule of 100. Whatever is your height in centimeters, minus 100 is the figure you get. It's a very crude estimate of your appropriate weight. It's easy for them to understand than actually keep talking in terms of BMI. So if like, for example, my height is 173 centimeters, my ideal weight should be less than 73 kilos. So if I am currently at maybe 85 or 90, so I can tell the patient or myself, okay, I am 15 or 16 kilo extra. So I need to cut it down. But how to reach this goal is highly totally individualistic and different for each person. So how much weight loss to expect? Patients ask us कि एक महीने में कितना weight loss हो जाएगा? So we tell them you target at least 0.5 to 1 kilo per week. Even if you can achieve 4 kilos per month, that's great, but try to sustain it. Don't go for any crash diet which makes you lose 8 to 10 kilos and you are back to square after 3 months.
Right. And we also know on the other side, which is backed by evidence, that even like a 5% weight loss, someone may be off target by 25% also, but even 5% weight loss can help improve your
Lot of
glucose
difference.
control, your blood pressure control. Even
True, sir.
10% weight loss can give rise to maybe prevention of diabetes. 10% weight loss is a great.
True, sir.
So while we do, and we should also tell them that this should be the ideal body weight by your height, we should also tell them that even small amounts of loss are beneficial.
True, sir.
So yeah. So you did talk about calorie restriction. You did say that it's not it's difficult to implement very gross calorie restriction. So Akshata, so are there any disadvantages or harmful effects of calorie restriction?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have to get this clear that calorie restriction, mild to moderate, is very useful. So it can be useful in obese individuals and even in non-obese individuals, not just to, improve metabolic parameters, but also to promote longevity. So, but severe calorie restriction is a problem. So I think severe calorie restriction, we have to be very careful about for many reasons. So when do you say severe calorie restriction? Like Dr. Deep already pointed out, that, we have to understand what basal metabolic rate is, the amount of, energy we're burning, calories we're burning, sitting and doing nothing all day, just what's required for the basic organ functions. So if we're prescribing calorie diets which are lesser than the basal metabolic rate, so then we're doing severe calorie restriction. Now that can be, very counterintuitive eventually, whereas a couple of things can happen. One is your basal metabolic rate itself will go down because it's a metabolic adaptation. So body needs 1200 calories to function, and you're giving up the body about 1000 calories. So of course the body, as a metabolic adaptation, is going to drop the basal metabolic rate. Now that may be okay in the short term, but what happens when they stop that particular diet is the body continues to have a low basal metabolic rate. So the metabolic rate of the individual itself goes down, and that may not spring back up again. So energy expenditure goes down, which also results in the weight regain. So that's one thing, which is why you see constantly patients come in with, they go to a dietitian, they have a crash diet, they lose 10 kgs and they gain all of it back. Why? Because of this, partly. Other things, it's very difficult to maintain nutritional needs with a very low calorie diet. So multiple nutritional deficiencies can come about. You can lose muscle mass. We talked so much about sarcopenia. So again, it's difficult to maintain your protein needs with a low calorie diet. So you can lose muscle mass, which is not good. Again, your resting energy expenditure is going down. You can lose bone mass. You can have reduced bone density. It can also negatively impact your immunity in the long run. And you can also have other issues with fertility. So menstrual cycles are also associated with energy availability in the body. So when you have severe calorie restriction, you can also have oligomenorrhea, amenorrhea, and also a reduction in fertility. So I'm not in favor of severe calorie restriction. And I agree, I think moderation is the key and maintenance of that.
Absolutely. Right. And now we have a question in a chat box from Dr. Shayantan Chakraborty. So what is the latest view regarding intermittent fasting? That's now a very popular thing, especially after recent studies showing more severe risk with intermittent fasting. Which is this study? Anyway, it's Dr. Tivan Marwa. Your views on intermittent fasting?
I think, as you said, that this has become very popular, particularly among the metros, and there are people who are running this sort of, workshops or studios to offer intermittent fasting to their clients. And I think this is an effort to reduce weight very quickly. Some people are desperate to lose weight, and this has become a sort of, way to lose weight. In fact, there are many types of intermittent fasting, alternate day fasting, modified alternate day fasting, time restricted eating, so on and so forth. The results are there in terms of, anthropometric data. The person can lose weight about a kilo or so in about a week or so. There is also a reduction in triglyceride, LDL cholesterol. There is some improvement in fasting blood glucose, some improvement in liver function. It is just directly related to weight reduction, but then there is also flip side. How many people are able to do it, and how many of them are going to do it regularly? So the benefits of intermittent fasting is just to have quick loss of weight that which people were frustrated over years by trying several ways and methodology, and then there is sort of a motivation through because they are paying money for that, and then they lose some kgs and get some benefit. But in regular practice, it is not possible. And then there are also some, as you were mentioning, that there are cardiovascular disadvantages. There is also no impact on blood pressure.
What our participant doctor suggested is that recent studies showing, more severe risk. Okay, so I'm not quite aware of this particular study. Could someone kindly enlighten me? Jeet, Veena, Akshata.
Yes, sir. This is a paper. This is an abstract presented in a conference. It's not a published paper. This paper has been criticized severely because of methodological issues. There have been issues of conflict of interest.
Okay. I do understand. Yeah. There have been so many other methodological issues. Yeah. So, but can we quickly open this up, because intermittent fasting, I mean, every day there's someone who will come to you and to me saying that should I do intermittent fasting, or many of them actually come and tell you that I am following intermittent fasting, still I'm not losing weight or whatever. So do you advise, Veena?
Yes, I do not advise if they're doing it, and there are good review articles and analysis. There are a lot of trials, definitely not good, like hard-end trials in humans, but still evidence showing that there are benefits, especially if it's a moderate, like 16:8 hours, which is not beyond. People are actually, now the condition is that people are coming with complete 24-hour or 48 hours fast. That is little too severe, and that has to be that actually verges on the side of eating disorder. So the whole shift is happening towards eating disorder. So with that view, I would say
you do advise, right? And you feel it works. Okay, Deep, you advise?
Yes, sir. I do also. Patient is taking. This is not something new. Intermittent fasting has been going on. It's an age-old thing. In different forms. So if, as Dr. Veena said, in moderation, like 16:8 hours is a very good way of. It is a practical way of which can be sustained for long periods of time.
Right. So what about your patient of diabetes on insulin? What do you do?
Yes, that's a great question.
Not eat for 16 hours?
No, sir, that would be difficult. A patient with diabetes on insulin is totally different ball game. He already has a good amount of beta cell dysfunction. He would be more exposed to glycemic variability. As such, extended fasting for 16 hours in patient with diabetes on insulin, I would be really wary of doing it.
Okay. Akshata, you believe in intermittent fasting as being more effective than just calorie restriction?
I think it's hard to say no to that, because the results are in front of us. We're seeing it work.
But frankly, if you look at the results, I mean, there have been two quite good studies that I can say I have access to, of which one shows there is definite evidence of weight loss, but the other says no, there isn't any significant weight loss. But
I think there's so much variability with intermittent fasting itself and with the regimes. And I think it's also important to consider what patients are eating during that, during the period that they're allowed to eat. which is also equally important. They shouldn't be downing coffee and black coffee and lots of other things. So I think I'm okay with intermittent fasting being done in moderation as long as it's working for the patient, but
Right.
not in
Okay.
patients with diabetes or sulfonylureas or insulin. That's an absolute no. But
Right.
Otherwise, if
Okay.
somebody's doing it and they're not, and they're finding benefits, I don't stop them.
Right. And Veena, we had a question which I skipped earlier because we were still in the evaluation phase of obesity, and this was to deal with suggestions. What are your simple suggestions to parents to prevent childhood obesity?
So yes, for children, it completely depends on how parents are following their own regimes. So it actually boils down to how they are planning the meals, what they are eating at home, the amount of exercise which is happening around them, in them. So designing the days around the kids is completely a responsibility of the parents, because kids are too young and they learn a lot from how the conversation is happening around food, around exercise inside the home. So I think in general, healthy lifestyle starts from what they look at. Environment is a big determinant there. So
Right. Yeah. So, so apart from the diet, the other part is exercise. So, do you think there is a right time to exercise? In the past, it is to be assumed that you have to go out early in the morning for your exercise. Can it be any time of the day? There are some studies which suggest that it depends on what you want to achieve, whether it's cardiovascular fitness or it's weight loss. So, depending on that, you may advise the time of exercise. So, what do you think?
so I did review recently today because I wanted to answer
Okay.
this question. Before that, I would have said that for patients, I was saying that they anyway have to fit in exercise in their whole busy schedule. So it actually depends on whenever they get time. So I was giving advices like exercise snacking in between, maybe do 1 minute every hour, all sorts of advice for people sitting all day on their computer desks. So till now, that was the advice. And I think that's a sensible advice when you have to just start moving somewhere. However, when we go deeper into the whole thing and resistance training versus aerobic, it is shown that, especially for athletes, this becomes an important question. When is their performance highest? And it has been shown, which I recently studied today, it's probably most of the records are being broken in the afternoon, late afternoon and early. So resistance training late afternoon, and there is a whole thing about muscle clock. It's a big science, and a lot of mice research is there in that. In fact, exercise is also one of the ZDs. Like apart from light, exercise also is an important thing. Set your sleep cycle. That's another area of research. So people on shift duties, adding exercise early in the morning is supposed to improve their sleep patterns. Again, to improve sleep patterns, it's said that morning time walk probably is helpful because of the early morning bright sunlight exposure that helps in sleep at late night. So depending on what is the aim of exercise, I think the time would matter. It's still very early on. Like to get recommendations from these trials is probably difficult. So I would still advise whenever you get time. And
I bet so. Yeah. Start off with these. Yeah. So we did talk about diet. We did talk about exercise. But of course, we do all admit that it's never a complete discussion. We're just scratching the surface of all these issues. But let's now come to medications. We all know that these are theoretically all should work, but in practice, in many individuals, at least it doesn't work. And we need also to think of medicines for control of obesity. And of course, as patients, they expect that we would have some medicine to prescribe and they will lose the weight. So would Dr. Deep Datta like to comment on the role of medicines in treatment of obesity?
So medicines have a role in the treatment of obesity, perhaps in the initial part. As I said, losing weight is difficult, maintaining losses are even more difficult, and maintaining the motivation is even more difficult. So medicines, they are like boosters, which gives a boost to the patients to have a more better implementation of therapeutic diet and lifestyle changes. But if a person believes I'm going to pop that magic pill or take that magic injection, I'm going to lose weight, sorry, it doesn't work that way. I tell my patients, at least you walk 10 steps. If you get results of 5 steps, with medicines, you may achieve a results of 8 steps. But if you don't walk that 10 steps, your results with medicine will be 0. So medicine helps in accentuating or improving the outcomes, and they are for short terms. Even with regards to bariatric surgery, I mean, without effort, even after bariatric surgery, patient does regain the weight and the diabetes just do come back. So ultimately, therapeutic lifestyle change implementation is easier and better in the long term with the short-term boost of short-term medical therapy of obesity.
Right. I mean, I've noticed during interactions with physicians from the US that they are very excited with the availability of, let's say, tirzepatide and all that. So, as if all problems of obesity will now be taken care of. I don't think that will ever happen. I mean, people will continue to take those medications, and of course, there'll be pharma industry will gain, but the obesity problem possibly will still remain. But Akshata, so there are so many anti-obesity drugs. There have been so many that have come to our country and were withdrawn. So what is the current status of anti-obesity medications? What is available to you and me?
Right. So we have a lot of
And sorry, current score for you all is 1,100 physicians across the country are watching this program. Thank you. Akshata, please go ahead.
Wow. So we have a lot of anti-obesity medications all around the world, but in India specifically, we can say we have only one that is actually approved for obesity, and that is Orlistat. So I'll talk about all of them just a little bit. So it's a lipase inhibitor. So basically, preventing the absorption of fat. So it works by just energy wastage of energy. You take in fat and it just gets out. But very minimally effective, about 3% of weight loss at the end of the year is what you could expect with this. So not a very highly effective agent, but not very expensive either. So you can use it. Comes with some kind of side effects like steatorrhea and gassiness as well. So we have 2 other medicines which are available. We have the GLP-1 receptor agonists. So around the world, we have liraglutide and semaglutide, and both of these have been approved for weight loss alone, as liraglutide as Saxenda in the 3 milligram dose, and semaglutide as Ozempic, which is the injectable version. However, in India, we don't have these 2 available. We have them available as their diabetic counterparts. So the diabetic counterparts with semaglutide is the oral version of semaglutide, which is the oral pill, which is taken daily, which is approved for diabetes, not approved only for obesity. However, can be used label.
No, please, sorry. Please complete. Yeah.
And we have liraglutide, which is the injectable form, which is available as Victoza, which is up to 1.8 milligram. And the exact same medicine is available as Saxenda around the world, up to a dose of 3 milligrams, which is indicated only for obesity, even without diabetes. So in individuals, with diabetes, yes, you could use GLP-1 receptor agonist, liraglutide, and semaglutide for weight loss, and it could even be used probably off-label in individuals or even non-obese, but that would only be off-label. We have a lot of other medicines. We have phentermine, topiramate, we have naltrexone, bupropion, and we also have tirzepatide, which is the dual GLP-GIP, the injectable, which is just like the next really close to bariatric surgery in terms of giving us weight loss benefits. So just to give you an idea of what you expect in terms of percentage of weight loss, with Orlistat, it's about 3%. With the GLP-1 receptor agonist that we have available here, which is liraglutide and oral sema, it's probably up to about 10% of body weight loss that you would see about a year. With Injectable semaglutide, which may come to India soon, it's about 15%. You can lose more than 15% of your weight. And with the injectable tirzepatide, which Dr. Shwankar was just talking about, it's more than 25% of weight loss. So initially, that's what we would expect only with bariatric surgery. So to be able to get that kind of amount of weight loss with a medicine is something that we really didn't expect, and I think we're waiting, and India really needs it. So let's see how things are going to. A lot of things happening in the medication world.
And I'll also share this interesting information which I found out some time back when maybe I was preparing for a talk. Is that injectable semaglutide for weight loss has approval of the DCGI in our country, but the company Novo probably is unable to procure it, source it, because too much of it is taken away by
high
the
demand.
American.
Demand is too high.
So they have, or maybe they haven't yet decided what's the best price to bring it to our country, but it's approved amongst the approved medications there. And then of course you can have retatrutide, which is a GLP, GIP, and glucagon triple agonist, which maybe looks like, at least from clinical trial data, possibly even be more effective, right? So we do have medications, but at the same time, at least with orlistat, I don't think we can expect a whole lot of weight loss. And the ones who are likely to respond to orlistat would be the ones who take a lot of fat in the diet. And I believe, that's my personal view, that there is a lot of obesity in our country because of high carbohydrate as well, not just high fat. So if someone is obese because he or she is having a lot of carbohydrates in their diet, using a lipase inhibitor will not help them, and they'll blame the drug, basically. And again, the ones who would benefit from the lipase inhibitor are also the ones who will have the maximum side effects because of oily stool and all that, those side effects, right? So finally, we all do understand that it's a huge struggle for us as physicians to get the patients off their weight and to maintain the lost weight, and for patients also, of course, is a struggle. So why is it so difficult to keep the weight down long term? And even Deep Datta talked about bariatric surgery also not being that effective unless the patient really puts in the effort. So can we have quick responses, maybe from Dr. Sivan Marwa first and then the others?
Can you repeat the question, because I didn't get the last part, please?
Right. So why is it so difficult to keep the weight down in the long term? Is it social or are there medical reasons as well?
Well, of course, there are many medical reasons, because the biology system is adjusted that even if an organism tries to lose weight, there are development of newer things, newer hormones, or secretion of hormones, or also there is a adaptation of calorie deficit, and because of this, people are not able to lose weight. And particularly hormones like ghrelin is secreted in higher quantity, leptin, and they don't allow person to lose weight. So normally it is very common practice for the HCPGs to blame the patient that they are not observing proper diet or exercise, or they are not maintaining the advice they were given. But there are other reasons also, and particularly because of there are biological reasons like secretion of hormones like ghrelin, which will not allow them to lose weight, and also there is calorie adaptation. Person loses weight, there is lesser thermogenesis, and because of this, they are not able to continue losing weight. And diabetic patients are more vulnerable to allow them to continue losing weight versus non-diabetic because of insulin resistance. So this is a very common myth that patients are not able to lose weight,
Right.
and we need to sympathize with them, and we need to offer them better health.
Sure. So Dr. Marwa has, of course, summarized it well. Would there be some other comments or opinions from the others? Veena?
I think maybe we should start looking at it differently. Maybe we should not be giving them weight loss targets at all, knowing very well that these are going to fail, and it puts in some unrealistic expectations. Rather than that, why don't we give them, because we know through a lot of data that it's ultimately, if they are improving their fitness, that offsets much of the side effects of high weight. So focusing on fitness, focusing on healthy eating, not focusing on weight number per se, like going away from that goal, shifting the goals may be a better way rather than
Okay,
fighting.
right. Okay, good. Deep, are you around?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So my take is that the concepts of developmental origin of health and disease says that a lot of our weight is determined by what our parents' weight were.
So blame it on the parents. At least better than blame it on the doctors, right? Can't hear you anymore. Deep.
There are many places where the blame can be put, actually.
So we all have the own metabolic threshold. We try to lose weight, the body comes back, try to come back to that original baseline. So it remains a continuous struggle.
Right, true. Akshata.
I think it's, a lot of things matter here. First of all, I think it's very difficult for individuals to follow lifestyle modifications continuously. So that can be a challenge, first of all. Secondly, even if they're doing it, like Dr. Deep already mentioned, genetically determined, some people have obesity as a disease where when you're trying to lose weight, your BMR itself falls. So your energy expenditure goes down and you're losing less calories sitting down and doing nothing. Most people are just following diets, they're not exercising. So if you're able to combine that with some good resistance training, that would also improve the energy expenditure at baseline. That would probably have better results. So I think that's important. Other thing is, of course, like Dr. Tivin already mentioned, satiety hormones going down, hunger hormones going up don't help at all. So combining that with medication would definitely help. So I think it's a combination of constant life changes, like Dr. Veena already mentioned, not looking at the weight goal, and exercise, resistance training, very important, not just aerobic exercise to improve muscle mass, and if required, medicine.
Yeah, and so absolutely right. And Veena also put in a very important point that not just focus on the weight number. And there's a question now from Dr. Wajid. So it's related to remission of diabetes by weight loss. So I think Roy Taylor and that's where is he from? Sorry,
Newcastle.
Newcastle upon Tyne. Yeah, right. So they have produced wonderful numbers and they have initiated so many different online programs. But how effective do you think in reality of achieving the weight loss and the remission of diabetes in your personal experience, Dr. Steven? Because Roy Taylor, I mean, initially at one meeting, I did say that this is about your very obese UK individuals, but many of our patients are not so obese. So will this work in our population as well? And then they have now got papers to show that even not so obese people, also there is almost similar remission of diabetes. Yes, Dr. Triven.
I think what Dr. Roy Taylor did in Newcastle and also some studies were done in US along with his group. It was a wonderful, very scientifically programmed study, and they could demonstrate that with the help of very high calorie restriction for 8 weeks, people could lose weight up to 15 kgs, and that helped improve insulin secretion, and also there was improvement in insulin resistance at the liver level, not at the muscle level. And some of the patients, they had improvement or restoration of euglycemia. This study, it included the calorie restriction was up to 600, and they were given food prepared by Nestle, which is very difficult to do in day-to-day life. But I think this study is a much better program and than intermittent fasting and then a plethora of other studies which are available. Not only this was also confirmed through experimental studies that there was improvement in first phase of insulin secretion. There was increment in second phase of insulin secretion. So I think I could definitely, accept what Roy Taylor could demonstrate. In practicality, it is difficult, but if we really offer this high calorie restricted diet, which is 600 to 800 calories per day for about 6 to 8 weeks, if we cannot reverse diabetes, which is present since years together, but the new onset diabetes, like for 2 or 3 years, in patients with BMI more
Right.
than 30
Yeah.
or 30 plus, we can definitely achieve.
Right. Good. So that's a hopeful note. We are coming towards the end of this program. We have a finite time schedule. So, but still, before we sign off, can we ask Dr. Deep Datta as to how do you counsel your patients for bariatric surgery? I know many of you have very strong, programs. You are associated with very strong bariatric surgery programs. Somehow, I must say that in my clinical practice, most patients, and there are a large number of patients who would qualify for bariatric surgery, but when I mention about bariatric surgery, they invariably can think of one relation, one friend who did not have success or who had miserable side effects out of bariatric surgery. And so the answer is no, doctor, I won't think of bariatric surgery. Of course, cost is another factor. Yes, Deep, how do you counsel your patients for bariatric surgery?
So it's difficult. Fully agree with you with your observation, sir. It's what happens is many times patients come motivated to us seeking for an option. When patients come asking with questions, sir, is it an option for me? In that scenario, the acceptance is much better. They come to us because they have questions about different types of bariatric surgeries, and there the acceptability is much more. Other than that, if I directly motivate patients for metabolic surgeries, I think the acceptance is not great in Delhi. Another factor is the cost, because not all insurance are covering metabolic surgeries. In Delhi, we do get to see a lot of patients who have CGHS beneficiaries or DGHS beneficiaries. So in them, if they have diabetes, morbid obesity, like 2 or more comorbidities, it is covered in them. So in them, I think convincing becomes easier. So cost factor is also a big deterrent. So in convincing patients for metabolic surgeries.
Right. The other part, I think Bina raised the issue, or someone have raised that patients may feel that if you do the surgery, then you don't have to follow anything else. You just lose weight. So how do you counsel them, and what do you tell them?
So I tell them no pain, no gain. So either you are motivated enough to stop eating totally, which even I cannot do it. So I cannot tell you to stop eating totally. But metabolic surgery is something like one form of surgery is they cut your stomach off and make it small. So you feel less hungry and you are satiated much earlier with a smaller meal. So don't force yourself to eat more so that your stomach is stretched again and become as big as baseline and you're back to square one. So they are just like an extreme form of medical therapy. The other way I put it this way also. So, but then you have to stick to your therapeutic diet and lifestyle changes, or it will not stay for long.
Right. So for the final question, I'll ask Akshata. We blame technology for many of the ills in modern life. The obesity is partly we blame on getting everything easy, not having to toil for them, and so on and so forth. So can technology be used to kill obesity, to treat obesity?
Yeah, so why not? So I think there's so many, everything is being digitalized now. Most people are hooked to their phones, and we don't even have to advise patients, but patients have already downloaded apps, and there are a ton of apps that are helping people lose weight by, giving them helping them count calories, helping them, with their daily exercise schedules, everything. So I think it's also equally important to remember for patients actually that you should not be using that as a standalone approach. You should also, I think it can work as an excellent adjunct to the traditional weight management program that we normally use, wherein the patient is evaluated, you assess for other comorbidities, you assign them a plan according to what they need, and you're also treating the other comorbidities and helping them alongside. And they can use digital platforms to support them in their, daily, whatever exercise or diet they're doing. They can use this as an adjunct. But I think using it alone may not be, may be harmful in some, wherein they're considering that, all the information is coming from the digital app and I don't have to see a doctor. So then there are a lot of things
That's
can be
harmful for you. That's harmful for you.
No. Harmful for the patient,
Okay.
because you're missing
Okay.
things. You've not diagnosed fatty liver, you've not diagnosed, obstructive
Okay.
sleep apnea,
Yeah.
you've not
Yeah,
diagnosed
sure.
so many things in that individual, which you could have kind of, helped him entirely.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Great. So we could go on and on, but we have to bring this session to a close soon. So I think we all recognize that obesity is a huge problem, even in our country today. And physicians on their own possibly cannot entirely eliminate this problem. They can be great facilitators to help individuals, but I think people should also be motivated, and that's also a term that has been used by others like Deep this evening. Unless you're motivated enough, possibly whatever you advise them, the best advice you give, possibly is not used. And there was a question earlier on which we didn't address, but now I am addressing that question, or sort of a very important observation by one of our members. The name is not identified. Is there a need for a national program in obesity management as the problem has grown to epidemic proportion in our country? I think the answer is a big yes. We should try and evolve that, and that will involve many things, including food choices that are available, maybe options for exercise. I mean, in Kolkata, for example, if you ask someone to go for an exercise, the back comes the reply, where's the space? Where do I exercise? Even the pavements are taken over by other people. So you can't even walk on the pavements. So those are issues that have to be addressed, not just by the individual, not just even also by us physicians, but has to have the cooperation and interaction, active help of the government, the local municipality, and everything. So this is a very interesting sort of discussion we had over the last 1 hour, a little bit more than an hour. But there's so many other facets that may have remained uncovered. So all of you, if you have further questions, you could even now send them across. How do they do? Maybe Dr. Kalkuti will tell you how we can
fantastic discussion. On behalf of Intas Pharmaceutical, I'd like to thank you for chairing this session. And of course, I'd like to thank all the experts, Dr. Tiven Marwa sir, Dr. Beena Bansal, ma'am, Dr. Deep Datta, Dr. Akshata Desai, ma'am, for taking out time from their busy schedule and making this event a highly interactive and successful one. Last but not the least, I'd like to thank all the audience who have joined us in such a huge numbers this evening. Thank you one and all. Good night, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Really grateful, sir. Wonderful program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shivanka, sir.
Thank you,
Have a
ma'am.
great
Thank you.
weekend.
Hello, Dr. Tiven. Good evening.
Right.